man, it's Dukes and Bell. You got through, I hope, the cold and the snow. It was mostly north of Atlanta. I know we got some flurries. Mike, did you get anything down there down south?
I got a little bit of flurries. I got to be honest, brother. You said get through the snow. I had to get through the freaking boredom. Man, was I bored this week. I said on social media, I was mock drafting. I watched some of the Georgia Texas A&M game. Bored. So yeah, now we get the week before the Super Bowl. But yeah, not much down here. Nothing stuck. Just a little bit of flurries to look at. That's it.
Yeah, look, I will tell you this, and it validated my hatred for the cold. Saturday was cold as AF. Okay. Walking outside, I was like, "Oh, that wind hit you." I was like, "I'm not down for this. I'm not built for this." So, but look, I had an interesting weekend. I'll tell you about it. A little bit of birthday mix in and some stuff that we did, and I really didn't want to do anything. I'll be honest with you. My wife's like, "We're going. I don't care if it's cold. I've paid for it." So I'll tell you about that. But I'll tell you this, man. Falcons have finished. They're hiring. At least it feels like on the offensive staff. And I say this: the most important pieces. There will be other guys, assistants, advisors, etc. But this weekend, we find out that Alex Van Pelt is going to be the quarterback's coach. And then, they hired Tanner Angstan, or Strand, that is, to be the passing game coordinator. Now, he was with the Jets as their OC. Folks up there, Mike, have told me, look, he had no talent, had no quarterback. Don't judge what happened with the Jets basically on what Tanner did, and now he's been, fired by them. A lot of promise. People feel like he's got a lot of promise. What do you think about these hires, man? And look, it feels like Kevin Stefanski knew where he wanted to go with this offensive staff.
Right. Look, it's a lot of brain power. I don't think there's any problem with that. And if you look at Engstrand, he's very unfamiliar to many folks. He's 43, but he'd been with the Lions. And he came with Aaron Glenn when he took the Jets job. He had been the passing game coordinator for the Lions. He'd been on that staff for years for Dan Campbell. So you're bringing more brain power. And for what it's worth, Van Pelt is considered a quarterback whisperer. He's been around the league. You can look at his resume. And we already know about what we got with Tommy Reese and Callahan coaching the O-line. It's a little more attractive. We talked about Zampese and some of the guys behind the scenes last year with the Falcons offense. This is a little more impressive just on resume. And again, only time will tell before the fans start pooping on it. But I think you're going to have every resource available to help when he's ready. Michael Penix Jr. be the best QB he can be.
I do agree. And these positions, OC, quarterbacks coach, these are the guys that are going to really be working with Michael on a day-to-day basis. What'd you think, Dede? And by the way, Big O, not with us here on Behind the Scenes. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for accessing it wherever you do, whether it's Insta Live, Twitter, X, whatever you call it, Facebook, all the places where you get our social media content. Dede, what'd you think about these hirings over the weekend for the Falcons?
I think it's good. And then, like you guys said, the more the merrier is the saying, right? So the more offensive minds you can put around your young talent, the better. I know a lot of people the knock with a strand coming from the Jets. They still, with your point, Carl, no talent. They still finished 10th in rushing in the NFL for 2025. So not bad. And then his time with the Lions, what was he? He was the pass game coordinator. They finished in the NFL in 3 top categories. I think it was total touchdowns, what else? First downs, and then points scored. So, that's a lot of good positives to take away when you look at what's coming to this offense and what we'll be able to do potentially with Michael Penix Jr. And again, all we're waiting on now at this point is to know an official timeline of when he's going to be back, because I think that at this point, that's kind of our biggest question mark outside of some player personnel decisions that got to be made in regards to free agency. But the biggest thing we really want to know is, are we going to be starting the season with Penix Jr. or are we going to have to be bringing somebody in to kind of get us through, the first few weeks and then he takes over? But as far as personnel, staff, coaching personnel, I think it's great.
Yeah. And you mentioned coming over from the Lions, the Jets gave him that opportunity. So Aaron knew him from the Lions when he was the DC. He coached under Ben Johnson, so he's familiar with what Ben has been doing, and Ben's taken the league by storm the last 4 years, guys. We know this. Lions leading the league in scoring, all that stuff, leads the Bears to the playoffs. You're hoping some of that he brings here to enhance our passing game. That's how you the big picture of it for Tanner and the passing game coordinator. Mike, what about these other hires around the league, man? Your boy Kubiak, you wanted him? He's going to the Raiders.
Yeah, now they could get Fernando Mendoza. Everyone sort of And again, the combine may change some of that, but right now it looks like the number 1 pick. So you'll be starting with a clean slate. Will Max Crosby still be there? That's a team that's just really a turnover. Tom Brady is going to be as he is involved as Matt is with us, or is it window dressing? But they say Brady's involved. But they're trying to remake the team. And the owner, it's sort of a cartoonish organization. It's just kind of one of those that we look at, kind of like Arizona. Probably what we were perceived at, around the league until we straighten ourselves out, and what the Jets have been. So we'll see what he does. But it's a guy that now we'll watch our guy, and we'll see what he does if these stories are true. I know that the Rooney Rule, a lot of folks felt, that was just a whole lot of nothing this year. It was a tough year for guys of color that were looking for jobs who had already been head coaches because the resume wasn't that strong. Mike McDaniel got a sniff, and he wound up as an OC. Brian Flores, I still think there's a stigma about his lawsuit with the NFL, but he got retained by the Vikings and got a raise to stay in Minnesota. Robert Saleh did get a job, and he's back as head coach with the Titans. But as far as African American head coaches, a lot of folks around the league looking like, Now there are African American executives. We're gonna have a press conference tomorrow with Ian Cunningham here in Atlanta. But it's down to what now? 3 head coaches in the NFL of color.
Yeah, but none were hired.
Right. I'm saying that's it. So I know that a lot of folks feel that, the Rooney Rule is a step in the right direction. It gives younger coaches the opportunity to interview, but it didn't get any juice. I just don't know if some of the African-American candidates this time around were as sexy or as attractive as some of the other ones. That's part of it. Just like, for instance, Raheem Morris interviewed. Now Raheem's a 2-time loser, as a head coach with a under 500 record. So, and he did interview for a couple jobs.
It may be true, but I'll tell you this. White guys, get second chances, even when they lose in other places. And that's just the reality of what guys around the league are talking about. I'm not an advocate for just doing it, by the way.
Right.
You just don't hire a black coach to hire a black coach. That's not what this conversation is. The conversation is qualified guys who've busted their ass, worked hard, checked all the boxes, Mike, fill all the needs, and then you go, And that's the part where you go, all right, what do you have to do? And I think that question's been asked, and we've discussed it. I know I have for 20 years. What do guys have to do to get jobs? And so when 10 are open and none get filled, you go, well, that's weird. And so, again, owners do what they want to do. I've had 3 separate owners tell me this. Okay? And one of them, I'll tell you who it is. You can imagine right now. We hire who we hire.
Mm-hmm.
I'm ultimately going to hire who I want to hire.
Right.
You know who that is?
Yep.
Jerry Jones.
Mm-hmm.
Bob McNair told me the same thing. Pat Bowlen told me the same thing. At the end of the day, and this was years ago prior to the Rooney Rule, when you were going, hey, how do you get more African-American coaches involved in this process when they're in the league? And owners ultimately do what they want to do. But to Mike's point, it is weird, and it makes you question, hey, why is this damn rule in place? It's a conversation, guys. It does not, by any stretch of the imagination, mean any of these guys who have been hired are going to do a bad job. It doesn't mean they're the wrong guys. It just means when you've got 10 jobs open and you're constantly promoting that you are a diverse league and that you want the advancement of these coaches who've come up through the ranks, and it doesn't happen, it makes you go, okay, what are they doing, or what do they need to do?
The knock has always been there's not enough African American coaches on the offensive side. We lobbied for you and I were talking about Romeo Crennel back in the day.
Yep.
Teams with new young quarterbacks, they want that offensive guy. So that was why they had a seminar here in Atlanta a couple of years ago where they were saying, look, for black coaches, the quickest track is to be on the offensive side of the football. Flores, as we said, he's got sort of extenuating circumstances. I always said people will interview him, but they're not going to hire him. But that's about a lawsuit. As far as like Minter, that's a relatively young white defensive coordinator. Hafley had been a head coach in college briefly, but you're right. It was a great big nothing burger this sequence around. But Raheem did get chances, but like I said, he's not an attractive hire. He did get the DC job with the Rams.
49ers.
Sorry, up the coast.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, look, to have a second chance at these interviews, either you're going to press somebody or not, but it's interesting to see losing other coaches who have lost who got jobs again. And again,
look, McCarthy, Stefanski, these are the ultimate retreads, some would say. Yeah,
but McCarthy has a Super Bowl, right? That's the thing where you always kind of bounce back to, even though it was Mike, 2010, right? When it happened.
Right.
You still go back to like, okay, he's got a ring. Maybe he knows what he's doing. Hey, man, we'll talk more about it today. A couple other things going on. And by the way, Mike LaFleur gets hired. We didn't mention that because we were talking about Kubiak.
Arizona.
Yeah, man. And here's what's crazy, Mike. They were on our staff. LaFleur is on our staff. Like what? They're both head coaches. It's like what you look around the league and all these guys that were here in 16 and guys I know it was a long time ago. But this is where the front office back then didn't have the vision to say, this is head coaching material. This guy can be one. We got to either keep him, pay him a little bit more, and see where this goes. And they let everybody go, and all of these guys, even Raheem, has been a damn head coach, you know?
Right.
So,
well, it's funny, Dan Quinn's coaching tree, it's kind of a misnomer because Matt LaFleur comes off that tree, but he didn't have the confidence to make him the OC when he was the quarterback's coach. So from Shanahan, it's one of my big pet peeves that how good the 17 team was on defense. We took a step backwards because Sarkisian couldn't manage Shanahan's offense. We had a guy that was in-house ready to do it. So it is interesting. Now, guys have had success. Shanahan has been to Super Bowls, hasn't won it, but Dan's got a ton of guys coaching in this league from that team.
It's crazy. All right. What about the Hawks trade, guys? It is behind the curtain. And as Mike said, maybe you were super bored this weekend. Maybe you got caught up on shows and did some binge watching, as I know Data and I did. We were talking about it. We'll tell you more about that today. But the Hawks do make a trade. Trade deadline is Thursday. Vit Krejci, bye-bye. Now, I'll say this. I saw Vit about 3 years ago playing in the G League. And they were telling me he's a point guard and they want to play him at point guard. And I'm like, and I always kind of felt like, okay, what is he going to be when he gets to the league? Because that's really the question. You can ball out in the G League, but when you get to the league, you got to have a role. And so he shoots a three halfway decent. But, Mike, they trade him for a big, I say a big, he's 6'9", Dewap Reith, who's Australian, played for the Australian team, was with Portland. But I don't even know if this dude's going to be on the squad. I don't even know if he's going to be here.
Day, who's been killing my hopes for the Hawks in a playoff run this year, has continuously said this is going to be reset, that Anseh Saleh is resetting the squad. So this guy might not even be on the team. You know, he's 6'9", but he is 245, so he's got some lead in his tuchus. Yeah. So a little more in the paint, but it's not, you know, we need a 7-foot rim protector. We need some big stud that, again, you know, the guys we wanted, but some of those teams we wanted guys aren't getting competitive now because the season matters. So we'll see. But, yeah, it could just simply be a salary dump and more moves to get us down for, again, this offseason. You better wow me this offseason with something because we're making some room if that's the case.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, look, and it doesn't feel like we had on Steve Coonan Friday, and Mike and I were like, "You think they're going to do something?" And it was like, "No, we don't feel like they're going to do anything." So, Thursday's the deadline. We'll see. You don't think they're doing anything, Dede? You think they're going to stay put, right?
Yeah, I think they are. I think this is more about stocking up the assets, the draft assets, and then, maybe potentially making some moves in regards to that, whether it's trading up with one of those first round picks, whatever the case may be. But I really think they're going to be content with just, letting the season play out, get whatever wins you can win, but start adding pieces to this roster that you have currently, which I'm like you, Mike. They need a big. They need a presence down in the front court. And I'll tell you what, we talked about how Saturday was, we had a little bit of things we had to do early in the morning with my oldest son. But once we got home, man, I watched Duke, Virginia Tech. I watched Kansas and BYU. So I got a chance to watch all three of the top three prospects again. Now, currently, the most recent draft thing that I saw, I think it had us at 3 taking Cameron Boozer. And I tell you what, man, I like that. And I think that's really where this team can win. I really think win meaning, they can really come up in this draft, I think, this year with those 2 first-round picks. So I think it's a matter of just, stockpiling, the assets and then start, adding to what you got, man, because I just really feel like the future for this team is really, really good. I know you guys hate to hear it, but
future, I mean, what? 2028?
We're already halfway through this season. You know what I mean? So, go ahead and start, building and making next year's team. And then beyond that, those teams that the city really can rally behind.
All right, let's get Mike Malone in here to build that team. Because losing to the Pacers the other night was embarrassing.
Embarrassing.
After getting smoked by Houston, I know they were banged up. A lot of guys were resting against Houston. But
Pacers
I'm not sold on Quinn. I don't know what they see in Quinn Snyder because I don't see anything from him. I'm glad Okongwu's developing his 3, but, you stunting Reece Sachet's growth. You know how I feel about that. Mush. Meanwhile, DeAndre Hunter's on another team. You see that?
Got traded.
Cavs, Kings, Bulls, Schroeder goes to Cleveland, and DeAndre Hunter goes to Sacramento. and Dario Saric goes to the Bulls. So like 3-way deal. So that was about it. Nothing to do with us other than a former player.
By the way, what did DeAndre Hunter do in Cleveland?
Nothing. And then complain.
Nothing. For everybody was like, oh, you're going to take him over. D had like 3 good games while he was here. Yeah, I said it. Okay.
The game 5 against the Heat, and you must remember the other ones.
A couple of regular season games where he showed up. Like, right, seriously.
Right.
Here's what we now know. Cam Reddish, bust.
Wow.
DeAndre Hunter, bust. That's what we now know. And
that's Travis Schlenk. That's on Schlenk.
Those guys.
And that's on Schlenk. Remember that night, draft party? We were at that draft party. We were so excited. 2 big steps in the ACC. Nothing.
Yeah, the problem was with DeAndre Hunter, for all the things he was touted as being, he just never really was. He just wasn't. He's supposed to be dude, he's 6'9". I've said this. You guys seen DeAndre Hunter? His body, his makeup? Like, he should be killing guys.
Right.
And you're like, every now and then, he turns it up. It was weak sauce, man. But that doesn't surprise me, Mike. He didn't help Cleveland. I told you this when he got traded. I said to you, there's a bunch of guys on that bench that play just like DeAndre Hunter.
Right.
He wasn't going to
and that's true, yeah.
There is. I said this last year. Like, watching the league like I do, man, the teams are trying to get diverse players that do various things. And DeAndre Hunter went there, and it was like, that didn't make sense to me. But either way. All right, we are going to talk to Joe Milburn. Is it Milburn or Milrow? Milrow?
Maloney.
Oh, Maloney. Thank you. Joe Maloney, want to get it right. President of the Sports Betting Alliance. Now, for those who don't know, we'll talk more about this on the show. Mike and I are big on this state getting legalized gambling. We're talking about the app and sports betting, all the things. The good news is it feels like, Mike, it might be moving in this direction. We're going to talk to Joe today to get a little bit more information about what's being presented to the legislature and also where this is going next. But he's in the mix and he's in the know. So just a little sidebar as we get ready for the Super Bowl, all the betting that'll be going on, right? Billions of dollars, right, on the Super Bowl every year.
Be nice to do it on one of your phones here in town. I know that the gambling scandals and some of that stuff with the athletes, it has nothing to do with you and me. No. But I do think to the casual fan or to the holy roller, it scares people. And we'll ask him about that. Is it having an effect on the perception that, all this stuff in your face now is creating a generation of degenerates? I don't think it is. I think, we'll find out, though.
All right, man. We're there for you at 2. Man, I was a poet. Didn't even know it. Make sure you're there. Sports Radio 92.9 The Game. Guys, we'll talk to you then.